How many times has this suspect been deported from the U.S.?
I absolutely love this obsession. In Texas, a man is on the run with 200 plus police officers and law enforcement agents on manhunt right now, looking for a suspect who opened fired, apparently like execution style, murdered 4 people. One of them being at least one of them being a child, in the state of Texas, in I believe it was Cleveland, Texas, and is now on the run. This comes kind of after the continued, as we've gone over it, the continued gun violence we see in the United States, as calls here in the States begin to rise for politicians, leaders, and community leaders, groups around the nation coming together and asking for there to be some kind of gun reform, meaningful gun reform, to stop these kinds of tragedies. But let's go take a look at some coverage on it, and we'll talk about it.
It is possible that the man accused of gunning down this mother, her 9-year-old son, and 3 other family members over the weekend in Texas should not have even been in the United States. Sources say to CNN that Francisco Oropesa has been deported more than once, and there is now an $80,000 reward for his capture.
All right, so would anybody like to? So this is off the bat. Is there a conversation to be had around immigration and gun ownership in the United States? Obviously, this is an example of a situation where somebody should not have been able to obtain a firearm. Now, some people will say, oh, well, maybe they probably got it illegally, or they got it from some dubious manner. Regardless of how he got this firearm, and let me be clear here, regardless of how he got this firearm, would you like to know the easiest way for him to have obtained this firearm? It is going to a friend who can own firearms. It is going to any private citizen and them either giving it to him or selling it to him privately, without any awareness of their immigration status, without any awareness of their criminal background, without any awareness at all of who the person is that they are selling their weapon to, or just plain simple giving their weapon to. The gun laws in the United States, especially between private individual sellers, are a big part of our lack inability to track and properly police the ownership of firearms. Do I understand that it's inconvenient to have to fill out paperwork when it's like you and your buddy neighbor that shoot together and hang out and everything else? Is that a pain in the ass? Yeah, it is. I recognize it's a pain in the ass to fill out paperwork. Go down to your local, your local FFA and have them, fill out transfer paperwork. I get it. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but that pain in the ass could have prevented this shooting, could have prevented this man who is in the country illegally, has been deported. Sorry, there's like a bunch of cat hair on my microphone. And somebody who otherwise should not have been able to obtain a firearm, still be able to get one in a totally legal, at least in terms of, or maybe, even if we're dabbling around the legal term, in a accessible avenue to get that firearm. Anyway. But the key to this is not that they're an immigrant. That's not really that relevant.
The FBI says
relevant. What did I say? Relevant? Yeah.
The San Jacinto County Sheriff says that Oropesa opened fire on his next-door neighbors after they asked him to quiet down. He had been firing his rifle in the yard.
What is this fucking Avengers music, guys?
The mother of 25-year-old victim Sonia Guzman said her daughter helped her buy a new home in Honduras and that she hopes Sonia's body will be returned there.
She never left me alone. It's very difficult to know that I won't hear her voice anymore. She left full of excitement, and now I'm just hoping she will come back, even if it is in a coffin, so that I can say goodbye.
Jesus.
We have CNN's Ed Lava.
Imagine you come to America from like Honduras, not exactly the most economically advanced country in the world, and you end up getting just gunned down from your psycho neighbor. Jesus.
They're in Cleveland, Texas, where the shooting happened. Ed, how many times has this suspect been deported from the U.S.?
Well, a source with U.S. Customs and Enforcement.
I do love this, though. I absolutely love this obsession. So for anybody out there who's going to you know, for all the right wingers who are inevitably going to comment on this video, can you tell me why CNN, the left wing, you know, woke, fake news, everything, all of that, all of it, why they're pushing so hard on this narrative that he is a formerly deported immigrant, honing in on his immigration status? Don't you think, isn't it supposed to be a narrative that the Democratic Party, CNN, and all the powers that be want more immigrants? Isn't that like part of the whole, like, you know, great replacement thing? So why are they focusing on it? If they're so left wing, why are they not focusing on the guns? Curious that, no? That kind of, it's kind of emblematic of a bias that doesn't actually exist at CNN. They're centrist at best and kind of center right, quite frankly. Should be legal. Be legal immigrants, not illegal. What do you mean legal immigrants, not illegal? I'm not sure what you mean.
Francisco Oropeza has been deported at least 4 times dating back to 2009.
Promise that sometimes shooters have been deported.
In 2016. All of this raising questions not only about whether or not he should have been here.
Well, the thing is that shooters, well, if we're talking in terms of the crime rate of immigrants to non-immigrants commit much more crime than immigrants do. More often than not, shooters are natural born citizens, or at the very least are citizens of the United States. They're not, you know, they're usually second generation immigrants to a degree. Remember that illegal immigrant who killed that girl in San Francisco 9 times? He had been deported. Yeah. I'm sure people who have immigrated here have committed crimes, but overwhelmingly, citizens commit more crimes than immigrants. But again, this is my point. Like, why are we talking about this? How is this relevant to how he ended up getting a firearm and shooting these people? It's not.
Obviously, but questions about how someone with that record could also have obtained the firearms that neighbors and people around him have told us that he collected and law enforcement had collected here from the crime scene. Oropeza lived here in this neighborhood, rural neighborhood just outside of Cleveland, Texas.
I'm gonna let this go a little bit and then respond to
Houston,
what you just said.
Behind me is where the deadly rampage.
Just don't want to keep pausing. That's all.
On Friday night, the owner of the house, Wilson Garcia, talked to us yesterday, and he described the harrowing scene inside and the time that passed from the moment that he and several others confronted Oropeza about shooting his weapons here in his yard. They simply asked him to not even stop shooting, he said, that just to fire on the other side of his property, and that's when...
Dude, this dude like lived in the... This is like actually kind of crazy to me too, because this dude did not live... Usually when you see people who have like ranges in their backyards, they live like a mile or like, you know, a quarter or a half a mile away from the next person. This is obviously a suburb. The idea that you wouldn't just call the cops... Like, from what I understand, they did call the cops on them. I don't know if they'll mention that in this specific presentation, but from what I understand, they did call the cops on him a couple times for you know, firing off you know, in the middle of the day or whatever. This is why you kind of need, you know, this would be a good time to have like noise ordinances, one could say. But yes, but illegal immigrants do crime. I mean, they do. Everyone does crime. Immigrants do crime, citizens do crime. Victims get super upset because they think that the person shouldn't. Well, the victims of crime are always going to are going to be upset about any number of disparate factors. The question always remains like, which ones are meaningful? Do we have a violent immigrant crime problem? No, we have a citizen violent crime problem. The amount of crime committed by if we were living in a world where you know, immigrants were coming into the country and committing a disproportionate amount of crime when compared to citizens of the United States, we would have a lot more of a conversation to have. That's a lot more of a, okay, what is going on, that like what flaws do we have in our system that are letting so many of these people in? But what we're talking about is individual cases, and those family members, and my heart goes out to them. Those family members are going to like want everything in place to make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody again, because that's the closest thing that they can get to justice. But that doesn't mean that we have a nationwide problem in terms of immigrant crime. It just means that family was unfortunately on the wrong end of a criminal altercation, I guess one could say. But you can say that about any mass shooting. This is why people get really like, why you see people go from not having an opinion on guns to having strong opinions after they've either been involved or had family members in mass shootings. Our involvement and our proximity to these kinds of really traumatizing events are obviously going to color our emotions. And all the data in the world won't make that person's hurt go away, and I feel for them. But there is as a broad system for an entire country, we need to look at it as a bigger picture. Crime, unfortunately, you're never going to stop crime. The real thing you try to do is mitigate crime and create system structures and communities that don't incentivize crime.
I will do what I want. And then Garcia told us that 10 to 20 minutes later, Oropesa returned back to the house and unleashed that deadly rampage.
Well, let's also be clear. Most people who come into the country do so legally and overstay their visas. They don't come in illegally. A vast majority of people who come into this country come in legally, overstay their visas, and then that's where the illegality comes from. I have no problem with us enforcing those laws. Like, obviously, there's a system for, for citizenship and everything else, which I think we could actually stand to make a lot easier. I'm not sure what your experience is in terms of gaining citizenship, but it is not an easy process. And the work visa process is also not incredibly easy either. If we were to make the process of coming into the country, applying for citizenship, and gaining that citizenship a lot easier, we would have a lot less of the illegality of staying. But most of the time, those people are staying because they're working jobs, and here in the United States, they're quite frankly, what's the word I'm looking for? Subsidizing a lot of the jobs that Americans don't want to do for, quite frankly, shit pay, which, yeah, I don't blame a lot of Americans for not wanting to do a lot of the backbreaking labor that illegal immigrants do for even worse wages. But somebody has to do those at the end of the day. But bringing them into the legal employment system would allow at the very least, them to gain access to rights and to legal apparatuses to hold companies accountable who utilize illegal labor, to then force them to actually hire American citizens and actually pay decent wages, or just convert their current illegal immigrant workers into legal workers and force them to pay better wages. It pulls the whole entire wage pool up as well. But most companies don't want that. They want to hire illegal immigrants because they want to be able to pay somebody, $6-7, because the lower your labor costs are, the higher your profit margin is.
That was my 9-year-old son and my wife too. And 2 people who died protecting my 2.5-year-old daughter. My 1.5-month-old son was protected with a lot of clothes so the killer wouldn't kill him too.
Can I get a source for that? I'll be honest, I don't believe you. Mainly because there's no economic reason why you would pay them that. Unless the minimum wage in California is so high that 15 is nice. I don't believe you on that one. You do realize the minimum wage only applies to legal workers in America, right? Like, the people who pick the berries and tomatoes and everything else, they get paid under the table. They don't get paid through payroll. Now they pay sales tax. They do pay into sales tax. Hundreds of illegal immigrants and all get at least that. 100% totally completely wrong on that. Well, I apologize, but I know hundreds of illegal immigrants isn't really I'm just kind of supposed to take your word on that, and again, I just don't. Sorry. I don't really have. That's fine if you can supply me with. What do you mean? I'm making a claim in that illegal immigrants do not apply to the legal work requirement to pay federally $7 and I believe it's 25 cents an hour throughout the entire country. Each state has their own minimum, but yeah, they don't fall under the legal requirement to be paid that minimum wage. The minimum wage is for U.S. citizens and for work visa applicants. Now, some of those immigrants might be on work visas, and that's how they get $15, which is how they would apply for that. But if you are here illegally, if you are a worker getting paid under the table, I can almost guarantee you're not making $15. And if you are, you're probably also not making any of the benefits that other workers could be having. There's quite a few other things you could be missing out on. You're also not even paying into Social Security, even though all of your sales tax is going into Social Security as well. Oh, or into the tax pool, I should say. But man, I can take you on a given day to hundreds of people working. 9% are illegal, and all are getting at least $15 an hour. You are quite wrong. Few illegals get paid under the table. I know of only a few, while I know hundreds who get. Wait. Few illegals. You're making a lot of very broad claims here. And again, I would love to see some data with this, but there's no, we're at an impasse on this one. I'm an expert at this. Cool. Sure. You're a Twitch chatter, my friend. Like.
And Brianna, a quick update on a situation we're monitoring right now. The sheriff in Montgomery County, which is just west of.
Wait, Montgomery County? What are we in, Maryland?
Here, said that they had a report of a possible sighting of the suspect just off of a highway, and they say that they are checking out that situation. That was within the last hour. This could be nothing, but they said they're searching and checking out that area intensely out of an abundance of caution. So we'll continue to monitor that throughout the afternoon. Brianna.
All right, Ed, thank you for the very latest on that.
Actually, even more interesting question. Is $15 an hour competitive in California? That's actually another. You never mentioned that.
Huge manhunt underway, Jim.
I don't know what the California minimum wage is, but if they're making $15, there's no reason why there's no reason why you would pay an illegal laborer the same amount you would a legal worker, since the illegal worker, you literally don't have to file paperwork for them. You can pay them whatever, and the government can't afford it. Or at the very least, there's a way to get out of not compensating those people properly. And we live under capitalism, unfortunately. The drive to increase profit margins will always outweigh everything else.
All right, so let's discuss it further with someone who knows a thing or two about it. CNN senior law enforcement analyst Charles Ramley led police departments here in Washington and in Philadelphia. First, Chief Ramsey, put yourself in this position. You're looking for a suspect, armed and dangerous. They say they have no leads. Could be an update on that. But if that's the case, what do you do?
Well, I mean, they're just going to continue to comb through whatever evidence they have, and hopefully somebody from the public reaches out. And it's important. People may think that it's really something is not important, and they don't call. It doesn't matter. Just call. Provide whatever information you have. In the meantime, they're going to be working with all the authorities in and around Texas and elsewhere, but also in Mexico. I mean, he's been deported apparently several times. However way he snuck into the country, he probably just do it in reverse and get back across the border if he's able to. Depends on just how mobile he is right now. They're also searching the houses in the area nearby just to make sure he didn't force his way in on someone else, and he's still holding other people. So they have to pay attention to every little thing right now in order to try to come up with just one nugget of information that'll lead to his arrest.
So let me ask you on the point.
What do we got? Expert. Let's see. Wage inequities grow wider for immigrants depending on their immigration status across the state in 2019. The median hourly wage for naturalized immigrants was $24 an hour compared to $19 for lawful residents and $13 for undocumented immigrants. This is from the California Immigrant Data Portal. If you would like to find me a better source than this, besides the people you've met, I will welcome any actual data. Otherwise, you know.
Point you bring up. Deported 4 times, made his way back into the country. How does that happen? You sneak your way in, and what does that show?
Well, I mean, we obviously have a lot of issues when it comes to immigration, people illegally crossing the border. I mean, there are thousands of miles of border that need to be protected, and people have a way of finding the weak spot. I think the biggest issue is how he got his hands on handguns. If he was illegally entered the country 4 different
Well,
times,
that's really easy. They don't have to fill out a background check if it's a private seller. There you go. They're like, this is what I mean. This is what I meant earlier. There is no legal apparatus, especially in the state of Texas. There is no legal apparatus to catch somebody who wants to buy a firearm from doing so. They can go to a private seller, and that private seller is not required to run a background check on that person. They are not required to fill out any transfer paperwork. It is as easy as someone handing you a fucking stick of gum. That's all it takes. Like this, and again, this is what I mean when I say the focus on immigration on the story. Be clear-eyed about this. The focus on this immigration story is nonsense. Because regardless of his immigration status didn't kill these people. His proximity to firearms are what killed these people. But CNN, Fox News, I don't know about MSNBC, but fuck them too. All of these folks are honing in on the immigration aspect because it's, it's fun, it's interesting, it's like a manhunt. It's like, oh, it's this, it's fucking Call of Duty. That's why. It's fucking Modern Warfare 2 when you're fucking running through like that small Texas town in like the first like half of the campaign. It's literally just that. Because that's what they're trying. That's the interesting part of the TV. An $80,000 reward for information on this illegal immigrant who's, snaking throughout our neighborhoods and danger to all this. It's all just a narrative. That's like, oh, the scary immigrants. Ooh, scary. Oh, foreign. Ooh, But keep in mind, the underlying issue here was his proximity to firearms. His illegality in terms of his immigration status into this country is secondary because he could have been here illegally and done what? A quarter of the harm, half of the harm to these people. But because he lives in the US, because we have so lax of gun laws, even somebody who's been deported 4 times is able to get a firearm. These are the faults in our system.
Possibly get his hands on a handgun. Was it through private sales? Was it straw purchasing? Did he use a false identity and legally purchase it in a gun store? I mean, I'm sure
Christ.
ATF is working on that.
If only
right
we
now.
had
How can you be
a registration process along with everything else, but God forbid you're going to infringe on people's rights.
Has been cited by law enforcement repeatedly. I do want to ask you something, given that you've led police departments before and you've done searches before for murder suspects. When the Texas governor announced that there was a reward for this, he took note, and this was in a tweet, and I think we can put this up here, something that he put out publicly, to note that the victims were all illegal immigrants. Is there any investigative or law enforcement value in noting that about the victims of this murder here, which included an 8-year-old boy?
Absolutely none whatsoever. That was totally unnecessary. It has absolutely nothing to do with the horrific crime that took place.
Yeah, the only reason why you'd mention immigration status is if you'd like to talk about immigration status instead of guns, which is why we're talking about it. Like again, and we're talking about this. This is CNN. So I don't know where the liberal media is on this one, but it damn sure ain't CNN.
Certainly with the person who committed the crime, the fact that he was in the country illegally. But as far as the victims, they are victims. And that's it. And I think that was totally inappropriate and just flat out wrong to include that in the message.
Also, the idea that the pro-life party cares about immigration status when there are children dead too. It really reveals why they're not actually pro-life.
Dropped to a record low in 2020, under 50%, less than half the murders. They find the murderer and get that person into the legal process. Why is that happening?
Well, things have changed over the years. I recall when I was in the Chicago Police Department and worked in violent crimes, 75, 80% clearance rates was not unusual. And now, you're lucky to hit 50%. And it's been a gradual decline over the years. Some of it has to do with a lack of people coming forward as witnesses. That has an awful lot to do with it. Certainly trust with police is a part of that particular part of it as well. So there's a combination of factors that really lead into why the clearance rate is so low. But it's really, to me, a sign that, the police have to work a lot harder in building the kind of relationships with the community that they need to build, because.
And he is right there. Community policing in terms of or at the very least, hiring from within communities to, hiring police officers from the communities in which they're going to be policing would go a really, really, really long way in solving a lot of this. And also, I think, keeping the peace a lot better. A problem that we have here in the United States is a lot of cops don't live in the areas in which they police. They drive in from the suburbs into the, urban areas, into the cities, into wherever, like like an invading force, and they roll around and, do their patrolling. They talk to, they constantly are, talking and interacting with people they don't have personal relationships with. They don't have personal, acquaintances with. So they don't know who almost anybody is. So everybody, to any police officer going into these areas are what's the word I'm looking for? Are threats. Everybody's a threat because you don't know anybody. When you don't know anybody and you're there to enforce the law, you have to kind of keep an eye on everybody, which makes you jumpy. It makes you paranoid. It's why we see a lot of cops revert to some of their, like emergency training to a degree, because it's just, you don't know who half these people are. Some of them you might not even speak Spanish. You might not even speak the language that they're speaking. So when they come to talk to you, you don't know if they're aggressing you, if they're not. This is what happens when your police forces aren't embedded in the communities.
Someone out there knows who's responsible for these crimes and provide information that will lead to the arrest and conviction of the individual. We tried everything. In DC, we had rewards for every single homicide. Same thing in Philadelphia. We got some leads as a result of that, but not nearly enough to raise that clearance rate beyond 60% or so.
Wow, that's a shame to hear that trust is a factor. Of course, trust in institutions such a.
What do you mean? Obviously. If your community doesn't trust you, if they see you not as a calming force, but as more of like an offensive one, then yeah, of course they're not gonna cooperate. You're not gonna get a lot of leads from people who don't trust you. They need to trust you before they're going to. I don't know why that's like a hard concept. That seems like the most obvious thing in the world. I don't know. Oh well, whatever. The thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.